Welcome to my rereadathon video for the last one of 2019. This is for the December prompt, which was to reread a holiday book or a book that reminds you of a holiday. I picked The Ocean Within by V.M. Caldwell. This was one of my favorite middle grade books as a kid, and I picked it because it's set around the summer holidays. They go to the beach, they go to see their aunt and uncle, or not aunt and uncle, they go to their grandmother's house. Like all the siblings, all the cousins, and it's about this girl, Elizabeth, who's a foster child. This is her first summer going there. She hasn't been adopted by the family. She's been in numerous different foster homes, and it's about her trying to fit in with the family and feeling very different and othered and being very different. And I really loved it as a kid, so I'm excited to get into it as an adult. So I have made some progress on this book. I'm not quite halfway, but I am getting close, and I should finish it either today or tomorrow. Honestly, like, it goes really fast and I'm really enjoying it. I really like the family dynamic and how I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. How Elizabeth doesn't fit in, but how it's dealt with. Both sides, like, her family is trying. Like, they're a very large family. She has, I forget how many cousins. I think she has like 8 cousins, or 6 cousins, 2 siblings for the foster family that she's in, and then her grandmother, and she's never met any of them before except for her 2 siblings. And she's a very shy, reserved person. She's definitely dealt with a lot of abandonment in her life as a foster child. She's been through a couple of foster families already, and it does affect her, and like, she expects this to be a temporary situation. She doesn't want to get attached. She doesn't want to let them in. She doesn't want to show what's important to her, and you can hear that through her narration, through like this entire book. You can hear that she's just like, there's no point, like, I don't want to get to know these people and then just like abandon again, you know, because that's her experience in life. She's never had like a steady, stable family, whereas the family she's becoming a part of, the Sheridans, are a very close-knit family, and they don't understand why they can't reach her and why like she's not reaching out. And there's like, I don't want to say bad behavior on both sides, but it's like both the family and Elizabeth do negative things that negatively impact their relationship, and both of them do positive things at points, and it's very, very interesting. And it's also interesting to see how she deals with the different personalities in the family, because with so many people and so many of them are loud and boisterous and not at all like what she is, it is very interesting just to see her like labeling them in different ways. Like, she calls the grandmother Iron Woman because she's like a very stern, very like strong person, but also like very loving, of course. And it's very interesting. I really enjoy it as just like a family story of this girl who doesn't fit in. Like, I related to this a lot as a kid. Like, not that I'd been adopted or anything, but just because she does feel very different from the family. She doesn't know how to interact with them. She doesn't really want to interact with them in a way. She's like doing this because she's like, I want to see the ocean. This is how I was able to see the ocean. I'm not here for a family. I'm here to fulfill my dream of seeing the ocean. Like, she's 11. She's been in foster care, I think, since she was like 3 or 4. Since she was like very, very young. This has been most of her life. It's just, I really enjoy it. I will say, something that I do tend to kind of repress whenever I think about this book is the spanking. The grandmother spanks, and it's just, I'm so not okay with that. Like, I'm so not okay with that. And it's such a big thing in this book. It's just like constantly mentioned and like discussed in depth, and I know it becomes more important at the end. It's just like, whenever I'm like a little bit removed from reading this, it's always like that just like goes completely out of my head, and now it's just mentioned like every other page that the grandmother spanks, and I just cringe so hard because like, that's awful. Like, spanking like a 4-year-old kid for standing up for like his family member is just like bad. I don't know. I'm not okay with the spanking in this, and I don't like how it's portrayed. And there are characters in this who are like, spanking's barbaric, but like, the overall message of the story is that it's not, it's fine. And I don't like that. I do think this book is worthwhile anyway. It was published in 99, so that was like 20 years ago. So again, I don't want to say product of its time, but I do feel like, especially in the 2000s, like especially the 2010s, there's definitely been a push against spanking, which is good. But yeah, I don't know. That's just something that, like, I have to deal with when reading this book, and it's kind of something that, like, I don't know. I'm, like, willing to take things as flaws, especially in rereads. When something's a flaw, it's like, okay, that's a bad thing. But I still enjoy the rest of the book, despite this flaw it has. So, not a fan of spanking, not a fan of spanking in this. If you're someone who can't read that, definitely, like, avoid this. But I'm so far really, really enjoying it. I love it. Like, I was kind of worried that I would read this and be like, oh, it's not as good as I remember. But I'm just so much in love with this book. So I have finished The Ocean Within by V.M. Caldwell, and I'm giving it 5 stars. I adore this book. I think it's so lovely. Just so, like, I connect so much with Elizabeth, and not just connect with her because I relate to her, but just, like, connect with her because I can relate to her, because she's just such a well-developed character, and I really, really enjoy this book. It's one of my favorite middle grades. It's one of the books I grew up on as a kid and just read so many times. I do think towards the end that it definitely does get wrapped up too quickly, because I do feel like reading this and getting to the end, I feel like it needed to happen in more than just, like, 2 or 3 days, because it does feel like the whole ending, the whole climax of this book happens all in the course of, like, 2 to 3 days, and, like, everything changes and everyone's perceptions and beliefs change, and then the book just ends because everything has, like, concluded and wrapped up, and it feels like there's not enough build up. Like, that's what it comes down to for me, is that I wish it was slower. I wish the ending was slower. I wish she'd taken more time to develop this character and develop her perception more, whereas, like, the beginning of this book is very slow, and, like, it's a lot of the same thing. It's Elizabeth not fitting in. It's Elizabeth not feeling like part of the family, not expecting to stay in the family. She sees this as a temporary situation that she's in order to see the ocean, and at the end of the summer she's going to get sent back and then placed with a different family, and then the cycle continues on. That's what her life is, and that's what she expects it to be. And most of this book is genuinely just her believing that and pushing the people in this family away. And there are some small changes and small growth, but then there's just a lot that happens and changes right at the end. And I know that's, like, kind of how climaxes happen just in general, but I do think it needed more time. I do think the beginning of this book, like, the first 2/3 is great, and the final third needed to be, like, an additional, like, 80 pages or something, just, like, to slow down the time frame so much more, because for me that is a big problem. And then, of course, the spanking thing that I mentioned before, like, paddling children is not okay, and I hate that this book has that, and I hate that it ruins this book in some ways, because, like, I do think I can look past it because I do have the nostalgic connection to this book. I can be like, okay, that's a flaw, that's not well done, and then I'm like, I have the childhood connection, you know? Like, I read this so many times and I already loved it, so the fact that the spanking is part of this book, I don't hate. Like, I mean, I hate it, but I'm willing to be like, okay, that's a flaw, and then move on and enjoy the rest of the book and sort of, like, distance myself from it. I do think it's because I have that connection, and I don't think I'd be able to do that if I was reading this book now for the first time. I think that would bother me a lot more, and I'd be a lot more uncomfortable, and just in general would like it less because of the spanking, because it's such an integral part of the story. And, like, she spanks their ages, so, like, if it's a 4-year-old, she spanked the 4-year-old like 4 times. She spanks a 15-year-old in this book, and it's like, who spanks a 15-year-old? Like, I get punishment, you know, like, when kids act out, like, when they do something dangerous, you know, like, there needs to be discipline. I'm not saying discipline is bad, but, like, anyone who has a paddle specifically for hitting children, like, I have a problem with that. So that's just, like, one of those bitter things. It's like, if you can look past that in this book, and I feel like I've been saying that a lot in my rereads this year, and it's just because, like, there are things I didn't notice as a kid, so they didn't bother me, and I've developed such a love for these books that, like, the love doesn't go away just because now I'm reading something that I have a problem with. And I don't know, I love this book. I do still recommend it, even with, like, the problems. I just think I love the dynamic between Elizabeth and this family that wants to adopt her, like, her foster family. I really like it. I like how it shows the family reaching out, and like the kids in the family reaching out. They're like, oh, you're our new cousin, like, hey, come play with us. And she says no, and they're like, okay. And then like they ask her to play with them every day for a week, and she says no every day for a week. And then they stop asking and they kind of stop wanting. And I like how it shows that cycle, and it like kind of demonstrates what's happening, and like how like no one's in the wrong. Like Elizabeth is in this situation. That's all she's ever expected from life. That's what she expects. But it's also like the family, the kids in the family especially, like they've never known that. Like they've grown up in this very loving, very what's the word? Connected family. Like they rely on their family so much, and it's always been there, so they don't understand her pushing them away. And I really like that element of this book. So I feel like the first 2/3 of this book, amazing. The final third, it was fine. Like I liked it, I enjoy it. I still gave this 5 stars. I adore this book. I do remember liking the sequel less than this one, like still definitely enjoying it, but the sequel, she takes place a year later, so like a lot of the issues in this book are a lot of the issues in that are very, very different than the focus in this book, because she's been a part of this family for a year by that point. But I enjoy it. I think it's worthwhile if it sounds like something you would enjoy. I love her character, and I love the dynamic with the family, and I just think it's wonderful. It feels weird to be ending this video without mentioning what I'm reading next month, but this has been the end of the year. I've completed all 12 prompts for the rereadathon. I have a playlist of all my rereadathon videos in case you're interested in watching any of my old reflections videos. This will be the last one of the year. I will also link down below the announcement for the Rereadathon 2020 in case you are interested in participating next year, because we're going to be doing this again, and I am very, very excited.